Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump has addressed a joint session of Congress just 43 days after taking office. Now, Trump spoke for 1 hour and 40 minutes, the longest speech a president has ever given to Congress.
Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible. Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation, we must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
And the news starts now. U.S. President Donald Trump has addressed a joint session of Congress just 43 days after taking office. Now, Trump spoke for 1 hour and 40 minutes, the longest speech a president has ever given to Congress. And for a large part of the address, Trump boasted about his administration's cuts to government, crackdown on immigration, and withdrawal from global accords. Near the end of the speech, he announced he had received a letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
Trump says Zelensky wrote that Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible and that Ukraine is willing to work with Trump to reach a peace deal. Zelensky thanked America for its support for the past 3 years in the war against Russia. Trump says Zelensky is committed to signing an agreement giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals.
I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace.
Trump spoke of a couple of other international issues. He reiterated his plans to reclaim the Panama Canal.
To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it.
Trump says the canal was built by America for Americans, but he says the U.S. will allow others to use it. Greenland is another one of Trump's targets, but he's toned down his remarks about taking over the frozen island in the mid-Atlantic. He says Greenland's future will be left up to its citizens. But he says if they want to become part of the U.S., they will be welcome.
We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population, but very, very large piece of land and very, very important for military security.
He says one way or another, the U.S. will get Greenland. On defense, Trump says he wants to build the most powerful military of the future.
As a first step, I'm asking Congress to fund a state-of-the-art Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our homeland, all made in the USA.
He says another part of his plan includes shipbuilding.
To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding.
On the issue of tariffs, Trump was brief. He repeated the refrain that other countries treat the U.S. unfairly. He says tariffs will make America rich again. Trump says farmers will benefit from these measures, but there may be a bit of difficulty in the beginning for them. He claims imported agriculture products are dirty and not inspected. The president admits tariffs will cause some hardship, but he downplays it, saying people will simply just have to bear with him.
And by the way, we're going to have growth in the auto industry like nobody's ever seen. Plants are opening up all over the place. Deals are being made. Never seen. That's a combination of the election win and tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? That, along with our other policies, will allow our auto industry to absolutely boom. It's going to boom. Spoke to the majors today, all three, the top people, and they're so excited. In fact, already numerous car companies have announced that they will be building massive automobile plants in America, with Honda just announcing a new plant in Indiana one of the largest anywhere in the world.
After the speech, Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin panned Trump's performance since he took office.
America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way. And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country and as a democracy.
Slotkin says Trump's economic strategy is going to hurt Americans in the pocketbook. She says the president is looking for trillions of dollars to pass along to the wealthiest in America.
And to do that, he's going to make you pay in every part of your life. Grocery and home prices are going up, not down, and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars, and start a trade war that will hurt manufacturing and farmers. Your premiums and prescriptions will cost more because the math on his proposals doesn't work without going after your health care.
Slotkin says the national debt is continuing to rise, and she warns that if Trump is not careful, he will lead the country into a recession. The speech was reminiscent of Trump's campaign rallies. After every point he made, Republicans in the crowd stood and applauded. Democrats are less than impressed. A few didn't bother attending. Among those that did, several walked out while the president spoke. And when Trump first spoke, security officials escorted a Democratic congressman out of the chamber for interrupting the president.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House and to cease any further disruptions. That's your warning. Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
President Donald Trump's recent address to Congress has been met with mixed reactions from analysts who argue it failed to bridge the deep political divide and social divides in the country. While the president emphasized themes of strength and unity, his rhetoric largely stuck to partisan priorities, leaving critics questioning whether the speech missed a critical chance to foster bipartisan cooperation. Take a look.
I agree. Most presidents, even when they're elected in very partisan times, like Bill Clinton, for example, they use these addresses to try to win some people over, to win over a few people in the other party, and to win over a few viewers, because that's the only way you get legislation passed. That's the only way you keep the government open when you're so closely divided. But that doesn't seem to be in Donald Trump's way of thinking about politics, which is what made this sound more like a campaign speech than a governing speech.
I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back.
It's very hard to form a narrative about people going on a journey to a promised land when you're not really about a promised land, but instead responding to a series of grievances. When he says a golden age of America, his golden age sounds like it's removing things that different groups are angry about for one reason or another. So that's not a play. That's not a story. That's a set of a list of grievances, and that's.
Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session.
It's become a more raucous occasion with far less decorum than historically was true of these occasions, which had a certain amount of ceremony and dignity to them. And at the beginning, it looked like it was going entirely off the rails.
Well, I think it reflected our moment, the back and forth, the Democratic Congressman Al Green interrupting the speech, the signs, but also the humor, the condescending and mocking humor that Donald Trump used, calling Senator Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. I mean, all of this, it breaks the decorum of these addresses in the past and even the recent past. These were to be addresses where people would rise above politics for at least one night. And I don't think we have a capacity for that right now. And it's not who he is.
Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible.
I think the news, if there was any, was his reading the letter from Zelensky and not editorializing in a negative way about it. So that seemed to be a bit of a thaw certainly from what we've seen over the last few days since the disastrous meeting in the Oval Office. So,
well, I think he is articulating a different view of national security than we have seen from Republicans in about 100 years. He's going back to an isolationist tradition, a unilateralist tradition. Isolationists were always expansionists, but they believed the United States should do it on its own and should not partner with Europe and other countries like that. And this was more of the same there. I think that's a problem for him because even many Republican voters side with Ukraine. What we're seeing, especially with regard to Ukraine, is this is having a real effect. And the shadow figure who was not mentioned in the speech is, of course, Vladimir Putin. And the concerns many people have, many members of the House and Senate have, of the president's close and, shall we say, very strange relationship with Vladimir Putin, that was not addressed.
If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
Traditionally, the Republican Party has been the party that believes that tariffs are bad. They were the party of tariffs until Herbert Hoover, and then they never wanted to be the party of tariffs again. And most business leaders, including those who support Donald Trump, don't like tariffs, and certainly that he really doubled down on the tariffs, which is going to make it harder for him down the line to either reverse himself or to claim he didn't really support tariffs. I mean, he can't blame someone else for that. It was interesting. He said, we can blame Marco Rubio if some things don't work out in the Middle East. He actually said that in the speech. He's taken personal ownership over the tariff issue. And if that produces rising costs, a trade war, supply chain problems, and perhaps a recession, as many Republican economists, as the Wall Street Journal thinks will happen, I don't know how he walks his way out of that black eye. He said almost nothing about China. He talked about China and tariffs, but everyone I talk to in the foreign policy world is very concerned about what's going to happen with regard to Taiwan right now. Here's the question: are the Chinese seeing our actions in Ukraine as meaning that we won't react if they invade Taiwan or not? And there's that is one of the issues, as you know, that actually brings Democrats and Republicans together. It was a potential unifying issue. You might have gotten Democrats to stand if he took a strong position on China. He didn't.
But I know this group is going to be voting for the tax.
I'm not surprised by the partisanship in the room, but I'm pretty sure it's not what the American people want. I think people go to a campaign event or they watch a campaign event because they want to see red meat. I don't think we have changed so much as a country. I think people do want to see presidential leadership as involving those moments when you can bring people together, when you can reach our higher, better angels, even if it's only for a few minutes. And I don't know if that hurts Trump or the Democrats more, but I think there's a longing for that.
And to that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps. Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
It was, I thought, shocking that he itemized programs that he said were examples of ridiculous expenditures, and almost all of them involved African nations. which I thought had a very kind of racial overtone to it.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation, we must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
This is the president who's putting forward an America First agenda that actually represents the interests of the American public. You know, he called for cutting taxes, slashing regulations, things that help grow the American economy. He promised to get back to trying to balance the budget, let alone all of the things he talked about securing our borders, reducing crime. But, you know, what I would say at the end of the day is, and he made this point, he's made tariff threat after tariff threat that has been met by success in terms of the things he's called for. We're talking about countries that have frankly not secured the border, that have allowed drugs to come to the United States, that violate their agreements with us. A lot of these countries allow China to duck tariffs and other regulations and just ship their products through these countries into the United States. Fentanyl, of course, comes along with them. So I think what you've seen is Trump successfully use tariff threats to be able to score these wins for the American public, to get these countries to play ball and keep up with their agreements and their arrangements.
U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated his interest in acquiring Greenland in his address to Congress, painting a picture of prosperity and safety for the people of the island, an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark. Now, in his speech, Trump said he had a message for the people of Greenland.
And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security, and I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it. We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population, but very, very large piece of land and very, very important for military security.
Trump's interest in Greenland has invigorated that country's independence movement, sparking calls for swift secession discussions with Denmark, its former colonial ruler. But Greenland's ruling Atakatigit party has said it will not rush an independence vote through after a March 11 general election, cautioning about possible economic and welfare implications.
First of all, I would like to draw the attention to the fact that he said we respect the Greenlandics' right to self-determination, and that, I think, was the most important part of that speech. And I am very optimistic about what will be a Greenlandic decision about this. They want to loosen their ties to Denmark. We are working on that to have a more equal relationship. But I have no idea that they want to do that in order to become, an integrated part of America. So emphasizing what he did, the right to self-determination, I think, was the most important part of the speech. I just want to add very shortly that there is an election going on in Greenland. It will be the 11th of March. And I will be reluctant to say much more about this until we know the result of that election. I think it's important that it's free and fair and without any kind of international intervention. So I think I will limit myself to these remarks.
Greenland, part of NATO through the membership of Denmark, has strategic significance for the U.S. military and for its ballistic missile early warning system, since the shortest route from Europe to North America runs via the Arctic island. The U.S. military maintains a permanent presence at the Pituffik Air Base in Greenland's northwest. The United States has expressed interest in expanding its military presence, including placing raiders there to monitor the waters between the island, Iceland, and Britain, which are a gateway for Russian Navy vessels and nuclear submarines.
A lot of think tank workers and trying to kind of present him with an intellectual scaffoldry that can explain what it is that he wants. and some of that has to do with military affairs, military security. There it's very difficult to see what he would gain. Some of it has to do with critical minerals, etc. There, Greenland is open for business, but if it's in terms of it's a very long-term perspective that this should be American for all perpetuity, then it might have a rational explanation. Worst is that this is just a question of making the USA larger on a map and let that go down in history.
The biggest gamble of Donald Trump's second term is now underway. Overnight, the U.S. president's long-threatened tariffs on its largest trading partners, Canada and Mexico, officially took effect, sparking fears of a global trade war. Now, goods from both countries are now subject to a 25% tariff, while existing tariffs on Chinese imports have been doubled to 20%. The move has rattled global markets, with stocks tumbling amid concerns over escalating tensions. Canada wasted no time in responding. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced retaliatory tariffs and delivered a strong message.
We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do.
President Trump defended the tariffs on his Truth Social platform, warning Canada that any retaliatory measures would be met with reciprocal increases.
25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs.
Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum also condemned the move, but stressed the need to avoid further escalation.
Por ello, hemos decidido responder.
Therefore, we have decided to respond with tariff and non-tariff measures that I will announce in a public square next Sunday. It is by no means our purpose to start an economic or trade confrontation, which unfortunately and regrettably is the opposite of what we should be doing. That is, integrating our economies more to strengthen our region.
China, also in the crosshairs of U.S. tariffs, has imposed its own levies on American agricultural products like pork, soybeans, and poultry.
The Chinese people will never yield to bullying or intimidation, or be deterred by hegemony. Pressure, coercion, and threats are not the right way to deal with China. Putting extreme pressure on China is aiming at the wrong target and making the wrong calculation.
With Canada, Mexico, and China being America's largest trading partners, these retaliatory measures are expected to increase costs for U.S. consumers and ramp up inflation.
My concerns about the interest rate scenario are largely tariff related. I think the tariff scenario is definitively an inflationary aspect to what can happen within the economy and the market. But broadly speaking, I don't think we've really gotten to the point where the Fed has completed their task, and they'll admit that themselves. So to the point where we need to see continued decline in the inflation picture. We need more things to happen for the economy to feel robust enough to be able to weather any storms. Right now, what I'm seeing is and hearing is a little bit of a stagflation concern.
The Atlanta Fed, using their GDP Now forecast, has updated their forecast for Q1 GDP growth to a contraction of 2.8%. Just 1 week ago, they were forecasting a contraction of 1.3%. So clearly this is growing in the wrong direction. We also have to remember that these tariffs that were put in place were just put in place today, and there's only roughly 3.5 weeks of the first quarter remaining. So clearly there's been some damage to the economy that's been done even prior to the tariffs in place. What concerns me is the impact of those tariffs potentially, if they stay in place and the reciprocal tariffs stay in place throughout the course of the second quarter, and we have a second consecutive quarter of negative real GDP growth. What does that translate into? Well, that's the academic definition of a recession. 2 consecutive quarters of negative real GDP growth. That's not in the forecast right now, but it's certainly something I'm paying attention to.
Despite warnings from economists and businesses about the risks of these policies, President Trump remains firm and is even threatening new tariffs on European goods next.
If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. This system is not fair to the United States and never was, and so on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. That's not, just one day cost us a lot of money. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in, and whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. A powerful storm is bearing down on the countries on Australia's eastern seaboard, and residents are bracing for impact. Take a look. Tropical Cyclone Alfred is expected to make landfall early Friday morning, posing a significant threat to major cities like Brisbane and the Gold Coast. This cyclone is unusual because it's the most southerly to threaten the region in over 50 years.
Take this seriously. This is a rare event. The governments across the board are taking this seriously, and Queenslanders, as well as those on the north coast of New South Wales, need to do so as well.
We are facing the potential that a cyclone could in fact cross the coast on high tide in the middle of the night, and we're asking Queenslanders to prepare for that, and we are here today to tell you that we are preparing for that right across all levels of government and agencies to support this state in a difficult period of time. I know this is, in many cases, for many Queenslanders, the first time they have experienced this, but I want to assure you that you will get through this if you stay connected, if you do the right things, and if you put in place those preparations now. We've repeatedly been speaking about getting ready over the last few days. We're now into the phase where it's hours rather than days, but you've still got time. You've got time to plan an evacuation route if you're in one of those zones. You've got time to clean up your home and make sure you've got the essentials if you're not in those areas.
LeBron James reached another milestone in his unprecedented NBA career, becoming the first player to score 50,000 total points after hitting a three-pointer in the first quarter of the Lakers' home game against the Pelicans. James, 40, already has the most regular season points after breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record in February 2023, a mark that had stood for 39 years. The Akron, Ohio native also holds the all-time playoff scoring record, a title he took from Michael Jordan in May of 2017. Now, James has shown no sign of slowing down in his 22nd season in the league. He was named Western Conference Player of the Month for February, extending his league record to 41 monthly awards, including 3 with the Lakers. He is also the oldest player to win the award. passing the previous record set by Karl Malone, who's now age 37, with the Utah Jazz in November of 2000. Four-time NBA champion James and the Lakers have been on a tear since acquiring Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks in a stunning trade for Anthony Davis last month. They entered Tuesday's contest on a 6-game winning streak and have shot up to second place in the Western Conference. And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us. Good night.